we heard that the Russian army, it's closing in. We didn't have any papers, any radios, any news, but there were always rumors. People are bringing, and you watched the everyday life was just the same. When you saw little different movements, what I want to bring out before I'm making the statement, which is very important, which I saw in 44, they started to bring so many people to Auschwitz that they couldn't manage killing those people, gassing and burning 24 hours a day. They couldn't make it. They had the people, and they knew the Russians are closing in. What they did, they dig the big pits and were burning those people in the open pits. For weeks, we smelled and breathed the burnt flesh and bones. And this is a fact. If you speak to any other survivors from my camp, they will testify to the same. And specifically the Polish people, they were taken in my time. In 44, or end of 44, there were big transport from people. First, they were all gypsies. They vanished in one night. They were in camp, the whole families together. And then there was a night of screaming that was right across the camp from us. I mean, we're divided only by the electric wire. Next day, at night, were terrible screaming because people knew where they are going. The whole family were taken. They first were loaded on the trucks, taken out of the camp just to mislead them where they are going. And then with the back ways, they took them to the crematorium. The next day, there was completely empty, the camp. And then came the contingents from the Hungarian Jews. There were few survivors. They took out few young people. How many I cannot, because I have been with those people. But the rest of them, they couldn't accommodate, so to say. So that's what was the next step, what they did. And I can, every day was 1,000 years. So I am going back with my thoughts to bring up just then from there on, as the Russian army was closing in, it was January. I don't know, maybe it started in December, but to our knowledge, we felt the movement and some left-hand statements from this and that. There were people were in close contact with the Germans, cleaning their rooms or doing different chores for them, or occasionally having come across with a newspaper. So we got the news that the Russians are closing in. It was shortly before this, I want to bring it up, probably my husband mentioned it, this was an uprising. They pushed one assessment to the oven, to the crematorium, and they blew up one crematorium. And later on, they caught all the people, and they were all gassed and killed. At the time we heard the news, suddenly we saw hundreds of trucks coming into the camp, loaded with wood. It was big chunks of wood, like trees, trees, like you will find in a lumberyard piled out. One day I got up, which I looked through, my view was the best view I had right across the crematorium. I saw like they are piling all around all the 3 crematoriums with the wood. We didn't know what's for, but the next statement, what was going around, that is preparing to finish off the whole camp. Which at that time was a lot of thousands of people. Could be that the Russians were closer than they thought, and to our advantage. They didn't have the time to finish the job, with the rumors were that they are planning to put poison in the bread to do something, you know, to just to finish off the whole inmates. But suddenly we are being awakened around the middle of the night, and we were asked to stay in front of the barracks to be counted, the famous cell. And as we're standing there, we're given one whole bread, which was maybe 1 foot long and 6 inches wide and 6 inches high. That was the size, like an oblong size. And I don't remember what was with it, either a piece of salami or piece of margarine or whatever. It was the rest of it was not important, the bread was important. And we were told, January the 15th, standing there, that they held us till the daylight, and that we are marching out from the camp. There was few sick rooms there, they called it the Revier or the hospitals, which people were very ill. They left them behind. And whoever was able to go, you were not asked. You were given the order to march. That's how we started, being that we never had a proper clothing. We were kept in camps all the time, in the camp, inside. And not proper shoes, nothing whatsoever. It was January the 15th. Snow was still here. We were told to march. Firstly, you know, we were very happy that we are leaving the camp. And my mother said to me, what God knows what they are going to do with them. So I said to my mother, if they kept us for so long in camp and now they are marching out, that was my prayers, that were my dreams. I don't care where. I mean, let's go out and later we'll see. It was a dead march. It took us maybe a week to go for 3 days or 4 days and 4 nights. We never had a calendar. We didn't have a watch. We just went by daylights and night lights. We're walking and walking. In the process of walking in the deep snow, there were a lot of people, they couldn't make it. They were holding for different reasons, either to grab a little snow just instead of water, or just to rest up a little bit. Those people were shot on the spot. So what we found, that all those people, they couldn't walk. They had, for any reason, some problems with their legs or sores or not good proper shoes or frozen feet because of that. They were most of the time on the beginning of the columns, marching columns. They were afraid that might be left behind. But in the last end, it was very hard to make it. We were like 5 women, me and my mother and 3 of my friends, where we formed one row and we promise ourselves always to keep together, to help each other. And in between was a cousin of mine, a second cousin, which was a very sick girl in camp, and she couldn't really walk. And we didn't want to leave her behind, and we felt she made it so far. She was the only survivor from the whole family. There were 8 children too. So we talked between me and my mother. We decided that we make a piece of string, and we had a very big bowl, iron bowl, that we had our ration, soup or whatever, water. That was a piece that had many use. We use basin to wash ourselves. We used this. We used to have a little water to drink. We used it. It was a big, maybe 10 inches diameter, red. And we're given, so we provided ourselves for the very bad times just to have a thing like this. So we took one bow like this, we made pierced two holes, I don't know with what, maybe in a stone, and sharp this. And I remember pulling a piece of cloth of me, either I had some belt or piece of string my mother gave me or somebody provided with the other one. We make 2 strings and we put this girl on it, and we were pulling her. It was like a slide. It was snow on the ground. We couldn't carry her. We didn't have the strength. But the only thing we could do, we accomplished the job. We took her along. She survived. But it was very hard on us. It came to a point that sliding, it was very dark. We didn't see. We were marching days and nights. And I don't know how we made it. We were not properly dressed. Maybe if we were not so young and strong, we could, because a lot of people didn't make this march, a lot. You just walked past your friends, you saw they were dead, it was probably by arriving in a different camps they were half remained from the amount we started with. After this march, one night they brought us to a little village. It was a place like I wouldn't say a restaurant, a country. How you call a country restaurant? A pub. In English, they called. They had drinks for the country people. And they left us not because we were tired, because the Germans, they had to guard us. They were walking with us, but they had to change guard. They were changing along the road. They were exchanging. But we were the same people that they started at one point. We had to reach another point, we didn't know where. Finally, they left us sleeping in barns. I remember sleeping in a hallway, and I heard all the noise, what was going on. People were drinking, the Germans were drinking. And then I felt, if there is a barn, I said to my mother, let's go in, it's so cold here, maybe we'll cover ourselves with a straw. Being that sometimes we used to go to the country, I was a little familiar with the layouts of the barns and things like this. So she followed me, and so did the other 3, one my cousin and 2 friends, that we decided, we swore to stick together. We went to the barn, and I found a little cart that, here the children would play, was full with straw. I said to my mother, you go lay down, and I will give me a little straw, I will lay under, just to keep warm. Fine. The next morning, 6 o'clock, the Germans came in, Aufstehen, get up, get up. We are marching again. There were a lot of people that had the situation to hide in the straw. But if I would do it, I would be killed by the bayonets, because what they did the next morning, if they saw a pile of hay, they went through right away. So I really don't know if people were hiding there, because I never met a person that she was recollecting the story about our situation at that point, if she survived because she marched the next morning, or she remained somewhere in hiding. Maybe few did, and I don't know. I know on few occasions I was told that people, they were in this spot, they didn't make it, they were killed by the bayonets. Excuse me.
know at this point where you were going to?
Yes, at this point, no. We were going through Silesia, which the next morning we're passing by, and there was a guy with a horse and a buggy, and he looked through, and he recognized my mother, and he called her by name, Mrs. Rosemary, which is the same name as mine. And my mother felt this is a sign that we should do something. And she said to me, how about running after him and hiding on the cart? You see what's going on. At that point, on the road, you saw a lot of German people. They were displaced from Germany to Poland, and the Polacks were taken away to Germany, just to play safe with their territories. They were packing up, or the collaborators, packing up and marching away from the Russian, which they were closing in. So I said to my mother, you see, I promised myself not to go in any radical way. Let me go with a middle way. I suffered in Auschwitz for 2 years. I said, if I will ever go out from it, I will be safe. Let me not do anything extraordinary to endanger myself at this point in time, because I realized that there's something more than that the war is closing in on the Germans, that our liberation is close, but we didn't know how we'll make out on this trip, because we were not given any food. We were not given. The only survivor who helped us, from one point, it was very difficult because we were not prepared. You have to live in Poland to realize what means a Polish winter. It's like you be on Siberia, below 0 degrees. And here you were with shoes with holes, with a tin this, and maybe I had the last minute I got a coat for my mother, that was her lifesaver, and a sweater for myself. And that's how we started the trip. So I said to my mother, if I trust the Polacks more, if I saw like this, he probably knows what's going on. He would give me a chance, because we could get away. Maybe we had a lot of followers and we started a commotion. But, you take the risk. But I didn't know I cannot depend on them. Even the war is to the end. You had another enemy. For some reason, I said to my mother, I'm not trusting them. I wouldn't be finished by the German, I will be finished by the Polacks. Let me go my own way. If they would want to kill us, they would do it right there and on. If we are marching somewhere, we have to reach a point. And my mother, whatever I said, how can she contradict me? She didn't know any better. She couldn't give me a better advice. So I tried to use my own common sense. I said, now I am alive. I am breathing. I am not eating. We had the portion of bread. We tried to manage with them. We ate a piece of bread, but we couldn't take it anymore from hunger. So we broke off a piece. My mother was saving the bread for me, and I was saving for her. That's how we work, which was very, very unusual. Very unusual, because I don't want to go into the stories what I encounter between family members, fight about piece of bread. It was a different making, maybe, that our family.
We're running very beyond our time.
Oh, so what you like me to do?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Good.
Please.
Now from there, I will make it very briefly. After maybe 3 days and 3 nights of us marching, they loaded us to again cattle cars, very open one, and we started to go in a full speed. Every few cars, they had one German soldier with a dog. From the pictures how they looked, and open. The snow was coming right on us, and we had packed there was maybe twice as many people that could stay comfortable, never mind sit. Unluckily, we went with a lot of Polacks in the car, which was, I didn't mention, we suffer in the Auschwitz tremendously from them, as a Jews again, in camp. And then they pushed all the Jews in one corner, which this created a lot of dead people, a lot of corpses. People were suffocated because they didn't have a room where to stay. We didn't give no food, not whatsoever. And I want to bring one point to relieve my conscience of something. There was between all those women one young woman, at that time maybe, little older than me, but maybe she was 22 or so. She was from France. She spoke French and little German. And she said to me, I was standing next to her, and in a sort, I was just pushing the Polacks away. I knew how to talk to them and to make more room for our people just to stay comfortable. And she saw that I take a little action, just to protect. She came over to me and she said, you don't know me and I don't know you, but I want to tell you, I am married, I am from Paris, and my husband is not Jewish. I was taken away because I am a Jew. My husband couldn't save me, and I have a little child. She said, I am not going to make it. If she told me her name, if you ever make it, she said, make sure that will notify my family in Paris. You see, this is such a trauma for me. I didn't believe that I will make it this trip anyway. But many times, the next 5 minutes, this person was dead. She sat down and she was gone. And over the years, I have been many times in France, many times in Paris, and I was trying to recall. There was no way. It was a person, a human being. She was desperate to let know that the family should know the way she died. And I could be the perfect messenger to do it. I have been in Paris, and there was no way I could recall the name. And this haunts me. And I cannot blame myself. I cannot. Because in those circumstances we lived, I didn't even took as serious that I will survive. I pay attention, and I remembered till I was just arrived to the next camp. On the way we stopped in Ravensbrück, I remember. We were there for half a day, and half of the transport was taken into the camp. And the rest of us, they didn't have a room of us. We started to go again, and we're told we are going to northern Germany, which after a few days, I really cannot recall, could have been probably somewhere around end of January 45. We wind up in Bergen-Belsen. And coming to this camp, it was a place, the first thing I saw, woods. We didn't see any barracks. Were just taken off or sent off from this, which we left behind a lot of dead people. They didn't make it. And we saw barracks, and on the roof were painted red crosses. We didn't know what it is. As we walked in, we had taken a group of people, I don't know how many, 300, 400, they just pushed us in. What we found, empty rooms, no bunks, nothing. No, absolutely 4 bare walls and a floor. And with a lot of Ukrainian people, there were multinational things, because the whole camp, all the bar, everything was emptied in Birkenau. So whoever made it, they put together and we pushed in there. When I came after 2-3 days, that I realized, I'm sorry to say, in comparison, when I make the mental comparison, living in 2 years in Birkenau and coming into this camp, it was the Birkenau, I looked to me in the perspective like a most civilized way or place to live, which this one was absolutely, you take a human being, you let it go free like an animal in the woods, no kitchen and no toilets, no place to relieve yourself, I mean no place to get a little water, absolutely nothing. So what you do? The first thing, you have to find yourself a corner where to sleep after such a ordeal, the trip that we made. You need a little rest. It was still winter. It was still in northern Germany, very cold. There was no heating. We were not given any food. I don't know how long it lasted. The condition didn't improve till the time of the liberation. What happened, that again, the typhus epidemic broke out, and you had a lot of people which didn't went through the typhus. Once you had it, you were immune. But over there, it was a concentration of many camps, not only the concentration camp, working camps. They all pushed those people, they brought like an exodus from all the camp. That was a point that specifically, they called it later the concentration of the women camps. They brought us there. And after a week or two, there were thousands of people died from starvation, from the plague, from the unsanitary conditions, and there was no the burying grounds. They piled up those people in the woods, again like in a lumber yard that you come in. Those piles, there were maybe 8 in the height and hundreds of feet in the length. Every day there was the place that you had to bring that person and to rotten away this thing. And as you know, it took us in these circumstances the last 3 weeks. The last 3 weeks it started to be very bad. We didn't get any rations anymore. We left on some sort of vegetables that they were feeding the cows and whatever, 5 to a person, and no water, absolutely no water. We had to dig a hole, and somebody brought from somewhere a pump, and it was very hard to get a little drink of water. And what I made a remark on my notes, I didn't look till now, which is very hard for me to say. There was incidents of cannibalism there. I don't know if you ever mentioned the situation was so bad. There was no help whatsoever. People were left just to die like this. And there were incidents that out of desperation, and the pain was so big, the pain of starvation or the pain or the desire to survive, that people took to any means they knew. We felt it in the air because we had air raids. We saw the English contingents of airplanes in the hundreds coming through the northern Germany, and we didn't mind to be bumped out, but we want them to have the victory, that they should combat the Germans, they should overtake them and pay for the ordeal or for the misery they install upon us. But it was a terrible scene. In April 15th, one day I got up and I saw there was not one German in sight. We didn't know what happened, and I felt strong enough. I started to walk, to try to go from one place to another, and I saw there was no watch posts, those they were guarding the camp, nobody in sight. And then I spotted a white flag somewhere on a fence. I was very ignorant. I didn't even know what it meant. I didn't look at the white flag. I looked for the Germans. I wanted to find them. I couldn't. And my mother was working during the night, watching the sick people. In the morning, she comes by and she says, "Children, we are liberated." So one of my friends said, "You know what? Your mother got crazy. She's absolutely crazy. Too bad. I think the war is towards the end, and she goes around, she screams, 'We are liberated.'" And this was the truth. They ran away, but they didn't realize that the English army surrounded the camp, and they were notified that it's an epidemic in the camp, and they were warned not to come in, but they surrounded the whole camp, and whomever they encountered, they were taken in, the Germans, they were taken in as a war prisoners, or whatever they did with them. And the next step, what they did, put yellow flags with skeleton's head, black skeleton heads on the flags, which means a death camp, or it's a dead. They should be careful. They didn't come, nobody came in for 2-3 days. And this was the 3 terrible days. Because if they would have come in the time, there would be more survivors. People, only the knowledge and that they are liberated, and seeing the liberators, on getting a little water to drink, or just a good word, something to keep them alive. But that was the fate. And after a few days, they came in with gas mask, and special uniforms, and special DDT, I believe, and we are all sprayed with it. And the sick people were taken away. They removed them. A few miles away, there were the built brick buildings, a whole complex like army barracks, but they were not army. It was later on I found out that were for the office, lodging for the officers, but they were separate rooms with casinos, with entertaining rooms, with all the normal facilities, and we tried to. I was one of the 5 women that we came from Auschwitz. They were stronger at that point to go from this camp with the army doctor, English army doctor, to the officers' barracks there, and we started to make first few beds by ourselves. There was no outside help except from the medical corps from the army, that they voluntarily came to help. And we started to prepare the beds one by one. They were going through the process of disinfection with sort of powders or whatever, and put in the beds. To make the story short, in Bergen-Belsen there were maybe 20,000 people died in the last stage of war, which were, I have the pictures home. I didn't bring them because they are horrible pictures, and they are showing them from time to time on television. Later on, the Germans from the neighboring town, they were taken, and they had, and all the SS women and men, they were taking part and helping to bringing those human beings to a condition like this. They had barehanded, the English people, the English soldiers made them pick up those bodies and put on the trucks, and they are buried in the mass graves in Bergen-Belsen. 10,000 in one time. They were, they came special, how you call it, what you dig the grounds.
Tractors?
Not that you dig out those for foundations, the special
bulldozer.
bulldozers. Excuse me, bulldozers. Dig for miles to be able to bury all those people. And we managed in a period of a week or two to transfer all those sick people, and the camp was 90% sick, to transfer them to the officers' barrack, which was tremendous. One barrack could hold 160 people, maybe to 200 people. They were two-story, beautiful, furnished and prepared to receive those people. But there was no help, medical help for them. So I believe what we encountered from the English army, very, very commending things. They worked day and night to help those people. They brought in, they shared the ration. Don't forget, the war was still going on when we were liberated. They shared the ration. The army, they were bringing their portion of soup or biscuits or what chocolate or whatever they could. And they sent in a contingent of nurses from England, from Red Cross, and later on we got nurses from Switzerland. And I stayed on. I found my brother. He was injured in the last days of war. They were left bleeding in the woods, a few kilometers after the place I was there. Coincidentally, I found him in a hospital, and I helped to nurse him through my connection, working all the time in the hospitals and with the doctors and nurses. I brought him back to the camp and to the barracks that I was, and we nursed him to health. He lives now in Los Angeles. And later on, I was working with a Swiss nurse, which I mentioned to you, and it was right after the war ended. There was no way of mailing a letter, get any connections whatsoever. There was no locomotion, absolutely nothing. And I was working day and night because I felt I understood the people. I was not afflicted at this point with the typhus. I had it in Birkenau, which you don't have it twice. And I worked very hard day and night just to do my share because there was not enough help. And at that point, one of the Swiss nurses had to return home to a funeral to a father. I wrote that time 3 letters to my hometown, to the city hall, and I wrote to International Red Cross, and I wrote to a Jewish agency in Zurich. And I just made 3 copies, 1 letter in 3 copies, and I gave it to the nurse and I asked her to mail it in Switzerland. She did it. All 3 letters arrived. 1 in my hometown, which my father survived. He was in Auschwitz too, but sent away after 6 weeks to a labor camp. And he survived. He came to my hometown. She found my 2 younger sisters, which they survived. And they posted my letter in front of the city hall. They sent a copy to the Jewish, they opened a Jewish home, for the survivors to come in and have 3 meals. And 1 got into the Jewish agency in Zurich, which I had my family in Switzerland. They work in the Hatzalah. You know what is Hatzalah? This is a committee that help Jews to save Jews from under Hitler's regime. They got it. And it was at that time that my husband arrived to Switzerland. They called him the next day and they handed him my letter. So he knew that I survived and my mother survived. And I found my brother. My father got a letter in Poland. And it was such a coincidence. A few weeks later, there was no way he could contact us. So with a knapsack, for 3 weeks, he was on the way till he came to northern Germany from Poland, by foot, by train, whatever way he could, just to see, because I gave the return address was hospital. I was there working, so he thought that I am sick and my mother is sick. So he left my 2 sisters in Poland, and he came to see what's going on. When he found us on the way to recovery, because don't forget, as strong as I was, I looked like a skeleton, and I brought a picture to show you. This is taken few days, which my husband showed us, few days by English soldier, and was found in England in the war archives, and was sent back to us, which I, at the same time, I have a picture, could be here, with our liberator, General Hugh from England. He was the first one to open our camp, and he remained till his last days of his life, our friend. And to every commemoration of liberation of the Camp Bergen-Belsen, he was invited. He used to come with his wife, and he really celebrated with us beautifully. So that's after the war, how we got together back, and we started to rebuild our lives from next to nothing. This is I got with my husband back. He found out in 45 that I'm alive, but he wound up to be in Israel. And that time Israel was still Palestine. There was no way that he could bring me over. So he got back. To every story is a little story. I used to, in camp, then they sent a contingent of, there were Israelis, but they were voluntary attachment to the English army. And they were working on the ground in Germany, helping to get out the Jewish people, either to probably mostly to Israel. And since they work illegally, and I had a little influence there, knowing everybody from the medical corps. This was the main force at that time, because there was not a regular camp. The whole camp was a hospital. So I helped them to go into hidings and to supply food for them, me and my family, to supply food for them. When my husband came to Brussels, to their office, and he said, what's his purpose of going to Germany? When he mentioned our name, he got a red carpet, and the next possible way, he was back in Germany, in Bergen-Belsen. He came shortly before Passover. We were married April the 7th, 46. It's exactly a year later, because we were taken apart in two different ways. I was still in Germany, he was liberated, and May 5th or 7th, he was, beginning of May 45, was in Switzerland. He was taken by a Swiss consul with his private car to Switzerland. From there on, he went to Israel. So
I know there's a lot to tell.
Well,
Would you like to show some of the pictures
I would
of
like,
your family
yeah,
today?
I just would like. I show all my. Did I show you my one picture? I didn't show the one. The one of me when the war broke out. I am with the braids. I would like to show this one. You have the little picture, this. Here, this way. This one.
Oh.
I don't think I show. This is the way I look when the war broke out. It could be seen on. This is the last picture. It was taken. The next one was in 42, which I misplaced somewhere, and
You have it? Yeah.
Yeah, you have it. And here, this is. We were married April
That you have.
the 7th. I have it. And now I want just to show you my two lovely daughters. It's okay? And now here, this is, we call them the third generation of women in the Rosmarin family. I have 3 grandsons, which I have here the pictures with me in my bag. I would like to show them too, if it's okay. Don't know what. Have to. Oh, this is my mother and me, which she survived, and she lives in Miami Beach now. She's closing, and she's going to be 90. And this is me and my family with my mother, my grandchildren.
Well, you had a very, very
That's
lengthy and very important story
Yes.
to tell us, and I'm
Oh,
sorry
by the
that
way,
we have
you see, I know that I took a picture which I would like to show you. This gentleman is not alive, but is one of the celebration of our liberation, and this is General Hugh from England. On, I am pointing here with my finger, and that's me here, and this is his wife here. That on every occasion when he was alive, he used to come and help to celebrate this, the liberation of the camp. He was the first one to come into the camp. And coincidentally, the first chaplain entering our camp was, which is now my mechoten, coincidentally, my daughter's father-in-law,
really.
which this is a very, very unusual coincidence.
Yes.
He was from England. He was attached, a rabbi,
Yeah.
attached to the English army. He was by the liberation.
Wow.
That's, part of, I know, since I I can talk for hours. But
Well,
thank you for
I'm
being so
very sorry
patient.
that we had
Yes,
to limit
I
you
wish-
because your story is, as I said before, extremely important, and we're very grateful to you.
Thank
for,
you.
for having given it to us.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Now I will have a little bottle. I
Okay,
did
go
very
ahead.
well, I
All
think.
right.
I tell you what, let's shift. If it's okay with you, there's going to be somebody else coming in. We can sit outside a
Perfect.
little bit
Absolutely.
and talk.
Absolutely.
Your story was